My brother slept with my wife. My parents sided with him. I left and built a life. 7 years later, they knocked on my door with his orphaned son and called it family obligation. I turned them away. AITA. I want to start with the knock. Not because everything before it doesn't matter, it does, and I'll get there, but because the knock is where everything I'd built for 7 years got tested in about 90 seconds. And I think the 90 seconds tells you more about where I am than anything that came before it. It was a Saturday, late afternoon. I was working. I work from home now, have done for years, and Saturdays blur into the week in a way I've come to like rather than mind. My girlfriend, her name is Kara, was in the kitchen. I could hear her moving around, music on low, the specific domestic quiet of a life that has been assembled carefully and on purpose. The knock came at 4:17. I remember the time because I just looked at my screen. I went to the door, opened it. My parents were standing on the porch. And next to them, slightly behind, in the way of someone who has been told to come and isn't sure they should have, was a boy of about 15. He had my brother's eyes. I registered that before I registered anything else. Before I registered my mother's expression or my father's posture or the specific quality of silence that had descended on my porch on a Saturday afternoon. I registered the eyes because you can't not. Some things arrive before your defenses do. I said no. My mother said my name. I said no, again, same word, different weight. My father said they just needed to talk, that they'd driven a long way, that they wouldn't ask for long. I looked at the boy. He was looking at his shoes. He had a bag at his feet, the kind of bag that isn't an overnight bag, the kind that has more in it than a visit requires. I stepped back from the door. I don't know why. I've asked myself since and I don't have a clean answer. Maybe because they'd driven a long way. Maybe because the boy was 15 and had his father's eyes and had done nothing to deserve standing on a stranger's porch with a bag at his feet. Maybe because some muscle memory of who I used to be around these people fired before the rest of me could stop it. I stepped back. They came in. That was my mistake. I knew it was a mistake when I made it. I made it anyway. Let me go back. I'll keep it as brief as I can because some of this has been inside me for 7 years, and if I let it all out in one direction, it won't stop. So I'll give you the shape of it. I was married for 4 years. Her name was Jess. We met young, built something together, the kind of relationship that feels like it has good bones. I believed in it. That's the part I've never been able to fully locate in myself afterward. I believed in it completely, not naively. I'd looked at it from different angles and decided it was real. My brother's name was Danny. He was 2 years younger. We'd had the normal relationship of brothers, competitive, occasionally difficult, fundamentally solid, or so I believed. He was at our wedding. He was in the photographs. He was at the dinner table at Christmas with the easy manner of someone completely comfortable in your life. I came home on a Thursday evening in March 7 years ago. I'm not going to describe what I found. I don't need to and you don't need me to. What I'll tell you is that I left the house within the hour, drove to a hotel, sat in the car park for a while, went inside, lay on the bed with my coat still on and stared at the ceiling for most of the night. I called my parents the next morning. My father said, "These things are complicated." That was the sentence. That was the full extent of what I got. These things are complicated. As though what had happened was a misunderstanding requiring context, rather than something that had ended the central relationship of my adult life in a Thursday evening. My mother said she hoped we could work through it. Work through it. I hung up. I didn't call back for a long time. I moved out, found a place, started working from home because I couldn't manage the specific performance of an office at that point, the maintained expressions and the normal conversations and the pretending that my external life matched my internal one. Home was easier, quieter, more honest. I filed for divorce. 2 weeks after I filed, Jess told me she was pregnant. I want to be precise about what that moment cost me. Not the information itself, somewhere underneath the shock I already knew. I want to be precise about the specific experience of sitting across from someone who had done what she'd done and watching her deliver information that she was somehow expecting me to receive with complexity, with the appropriate weight of impending fatherhood, with a response that acknowledged my role in something I had no role in. I asked for a paternity test. She said that was cruel. I said I wanted a paternity test. The court ordered one during the divorce proceedings. The result was what I already knew it would be. The divorce settled. The court set up optional weekly visits, I think because nobody quite knew what else to do with the situation legally, and optional was the compromise. I didn't take any of them, not one. Not because I was punishing anyone, because the visits were optional and I chose the other option. I moved away. Different city, different life. Built something from scratch in the specific way you build things when the previous version has been demolished, carefully, on purpose, checking the foundations as you go. Kara came into my life about 3 years after I left. I told her everything on our 4th date. Not because I had to, but because I decided after Jess that I wasn't going to let anything accumulate in the spaces between me and someone I was choosing. She listened, asked good questions, didn't look at me with the particular expression of someone recalibrating their assessment of you. She said, "That's a lot to have carried." I said, "It's lighter than it was." That was true. 2 months ago, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a family solicitor. She told me there had been an accident, a car accident. Both Danny and Jess had been killed. The boy, his name was Noah, was 15 and had been staying with my parents at the time, as he apparently did occasionally. She told me this as though I would know what to do with it, as though I was a person with a clear relationship to this information. I thanked her, I hung up, I sat at my desk for a while. I didn't cry. I want to be honest about that. I felt something, not nothing. I'm not built for nothing. But it was complex and distant and didn't resolve into grief in the way grief is supposed to resolve. What I felt was closer to the sensation of a door you'd already closed being confirmed shut, a finality that had already been anticipated. I told Kara that evening. She held my hand. She didn't tell me what to feel. That's one of the things about her. 6 weeks passed. Then the Saturday, the knock, the porch. They came inside and sat in my living room. My living room in my house, in the city I'd chosen specifically because it was mine. Noah sat on the end of the sofa. He'd stopped looking at his shoes and was now looking at the room with the quiet, observational quality of a teenager trying to read a situation they haven't been fully briefed on. Kara had come out of the kitchen. She was standing in the doorway. I could feel her reading the room too from a different angle. My mother said they'd been struggling since the accident. She said they were older now, they were, both of them visibly aged in ways I hadn't tracked because I hadn't been watching, and that the house wasn't built for a teenager. She said financially things were difficult. She said Noah needed stability. She said family was family. She said that last one, looking at me directly. I said, "I need you to tell me what you're asking." My father said they were asking me to take Noah in, to give him a home, that they couldn't provide what he needed and I could. I said no. My mother said my name again, the same way she'd said it at the door. I said, "I've given you my answer." My father said, "He has nowhere else to go." I said, "That's not something I created." My mother said, "He's 15 years old." I said, "I know how old he is." Kara made a small sound from the doorway. I didn't look at her. My father leaned forward. He used the voice he'd used my entire childhood when he wanted me to understand that the reasonable position was his. He said, "Whatever happened between you and Danny, that's between you and Danny. Danny is gone. This boy lost his parents. He is your nephew by blood, and he needs someone, and you are that someone, and I don't understand how you can sit there and—" I said, "Then let me explain it." The room went quiet. I said, "I left. 7 years ago I walked out of a marriage and a family and a city because of a specific betrayal that nobody in this room adequately acknowledged. Not then. Not after. Not once in 7 years has either of you said the words 'I'm sorry' to me about what happened. What I received was 'These things are complicated, and I hope you can work through it.' That was the full extent of what I was given." My mother started to say something. I said, "I'm not finished." I said, "I built something, from nothing. Moved to a city where nobody knew me, built a career, built a home, found someone who chose me after knowing everything. I did all of that quietly and without asking anything from any of you. And now you've driven here on a Saturday and knocked on my door and you're asking me to take in a child whose existence is the direct consequence of the thing that ended my marriage. And you're framing it as family obligation. As though the word family has ever meant the same thing to all of us in this room." Noah was very still on the end of the sofa. My father said, "He can hear you." I said, "I know." I looked at Noah then, properly. For the first time since they'd come in, he was looking back at me, his father's eyes. 15 years old, 2 dead parents, a bag at his feet, and a grandfather who'd brought him to a stranger's house on a Saturday and called it family. None of that was his fault. I want to say that clearly because I need it to be clear. Not one moment of any of this was his fault. He was born into a situation he didn't choose, to parents who made decisions he had no part in, and he had arrived on my porch carrying the consequences of those decisions, the same way I had been carrying them for 7 years. None of that changed my answer. I said to him, directly and as quietly as I could manage, "I'm sorry about your parents. I genuinely am. What happened to you is not fair and you didn't deserve it." He nodded once, very small. I said, "I'm not able to be what they've brought you here to ask me to be. That's not about you. I need you to understand that if you can." He looked at his hands. My mother was crying. My father was looking at the floor. I stood up. I said, "I need you to leave now. All of you. I'm sorry for how this has gone, but my answer isn't going to change and staying longer isn't going to help anyone." They left. Noah carried his own bag to the car. He didn't look back. My mother said something to me at the door that I won't repeat here. Not because it was particularly devastating. It wasn't. It was the language of guilt and obligation that I'd heard my whole life dressed in new circumstances. But because it belongs to a conversation that's now closed, and I'm done transcribing closed conversations. I shut the door. Kara was standing in the living room. I knew before she spoke. She said she thought I was wrong, that she understood the history, she did, she knew all of it, but that a 15-year-old boy with nowhere to go was not the same as the choices his parents made. That there was a difference between protecting yourself from your past and using your past as a reason to not be present for something that needed you. She said it carefully and she meant it, and she wasn't wrong to say it. I said, "I know that's what you think." She said, "Is there any part of you that agrees?" I thought about it honestly, sat with it the way I try to sit with things now instead of just reacting. I said, "No." She looked at me for a long time, the expression of someone who loves you and is watching something become clear that they'd hoped wouldn't become clear. She said, "I don't know if I can be here for this version of you." I said, "I know." She said, "That's it, I know." I said, "I'm not going to argue you into staying. I'm not going to perform doubt. I don't have to make this easier. You know who I am. You've known for 3 years. If this is where that stops being enough, then I understand it. But I'm not changing my answer. I made my peace with what my answer is. But I am not going to force you to accept that answer. That's on me." She packed that night. Not everything, she left some things. The way people leave things when they're not sure if leaving is permanent. She said she loved me at the door. Same automatic quality as the last time someone did that. I said goodbye. I closed the door. It's been approximately 16 days. Kara hasn't called. I haven't called her. I check my phone less than I used to, which is either healing or avoidance, and I'm not certain enough of the distinction to commit to either label. I don't know what happened with Noah. I've thought about him more than I expected to, not with guilt exactly, more with a complicated awareness that he's somewhere carrying something I couldn't take from him, and that I hope someone else has. I hope there's someone. I don't know that there is. My parents haven't contacted me. My extended family tried texting me something I am not going to mention here. I blocked them all. My house is quiet, the same quiet it was before the Saturday, before the knock, before the 90 seconds on the porch that tested everything I'd built. I work at my desk. I make my own coffee. I move through the rooms of a life I assembled on purpose. I don't feel like a monster. I've checked. What I feel is a man who made the only decision available to him given who he actually is rather than who a different history might have made him. Is that enough? I genuinely don't know. I know it's what I have. A friend of mine referred me to post no vex here. So here I am asking all the internet strangers, AITA, for refusing to take in a 15-year-old orphan whose existence is the direct result of the betrayal that ended my marriage, for not apologizing for having limits that were built by people who are now asking me to remove them, for telling Kara I wouldn't perform doubt I didn't have and watching her leave rather than lying to keep her. I didn't go looking for any of this. It knocked on my door on a Saturday at 4:17, and I stepped back when I should have stayed in the doorway. That part I own. Everything after it I stand by. I'm sitting in the home I built. It's quiet. For now, that's enough.